Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Merry Christmas to you. Hopefully you had a fine holiday with family and friends. And now we are on to the college football playoff. It's just a few days away. We've got Chip Minnich on the line from theozone.net. Please join him and the rest of the staff covering Ohio State football. Chip, how you doing tonight?
I'm very well, and Merry Christmas to you, Mark.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you stopping by to give us another perspective on this game that people just can't seem to get enough of. It may, in fact, be the two best teams in the country. LSU fans would take exception to that. And I guess there's a fourth team in the playoff. They get to participate as well. Nobody giving Oklahoma much of a chance. But Sooner fans, hey, you've got just as much of a chance as anybody else based on nobody's going to put 14 points up on the board for the other team before the game starts. So we got four really good teams. We should have a good playoff coming up. So let's focus on this one, of course, with the Buckeyes going up against Clemson. And when we look at metrics and nuts and bolts of offense and defense versus offense, both sides of the ball, Chip, we see a lot of this is the best team in the country. This is the second or third best team in the country. Just the metrics are just overwhelming for these two teams in regards to how good and how dominant they've been against their schedules. They're the two best teams if you just look at numbers and dominance. If we go beyond that, there's certainly psychology. These games are won and lost between the ears to a certain extent. You got to have a great team. You have to have a very talented team physically, but sometimes the psychology determines the final in regards to how these teams are preparing for this game. So I guess on one hand, if you want to play the Clemson psychology advantage, it's that they dominated not necessarily this particular team, but a lot of the same players will be on the field from 2016, and they have that edge of saying, we've got playoff experience. We won the whole thing last year. We know what it's like to be here and to do it. Ohio State is a little bit more battle-tested, quite a bit more battle-tested this season than Clemson. What kind of psychological advantage or perspective do you take on this one?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I think psychologically, this is going to be something where both Clemson and Ohio State are trying to play that card, if you will. You know, obviously Clemson has a right to feel disrespected coming into this. They are the defending national champions. They're ranked third coming into this, even though a lot of people, as you correctly stated, believe that they are arguably like the best team in the country. Now, here's just, I'm going to be, for an Ohio State perspective, I think that Ohio State, as you said, they are much better in terms of being battle tested than Clemson. I think the games that they had down the stretch against Penn State, against Michigan, against Wisconsin, I think they're a little better prepared psychologically for what they're about to face when they start to play against Clemson. I think if they give up a touchdown or are down at the onset, as they were against Wisconsin, I think Ohio State, that they can bounce back from this. Now, this is just one man's perspective. I'm going to be kind of looking at this historically in the idea that you rattled off the previous meeting in 2016 where Clemson shut out Ohio State. It was, you know, a 31-0 rout. And there are players on that Clemson team. There are some players on the Ohio State team who were members of that. And I think that it would be much, much easier for a Clemson player to come into this game feeling somewhat overconfident that, okay, we've played these guys. We had no problem with them. And I think Ohio State, kind of like many years ago when they played the seemingly invincible Miami Hurricanes in the 2003 Fiesta Bowl, I think if they can withstand that early onslaught that probably is coming, and get some, you know, like a sack on Trevor Lawrence, or break up, you know, passes, or cause a turnover or something like that, I think there might be a little doubt that could creep into the minds of Clemson, like, oh, this isn't the same Ohio State team that we played years ago. So psychologically, I'm going to give the slight edge to Ohio State. I know that Clemson wants to play that disrespect card, and I understand why, but I'm going to give the edge to Ohio State. I think that they truly are being overlooked by almost virtually the entire national media. I think they're only a 2-point underdog, but I think by and large, I haven't seen anyone give Ohio State much of a chance to beat Clemson in this one.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry to talk Ohio State football and Clemson and the nation. Certainly check out all the bowl previews and playoff previews that we have posted, with many more to come. And of course, instant analysis once the games are over. We got Chip Minnich on the line from the Ozone. So what comes to mind there, you point to that Miami game. Now, in terms of players on the field and so forth, those guys are 35, 40 years old right now. That has nothing to do with it. But there is psychology that you can take an example from history and say, this may play into the same plot. And what I think of there is that, again, and you outlined it, that Miami team had won 34 consecutive games. They were a 2-touchdown favorite. So not necessarily the same type of respect given by Vegas there to this game. But I think what Ohio State brought was a very tough mindset. They had a very mentally tough team that played a very difficult Big Ten schedule. Miami dominated the Big East at the time. The Big East was not a good football conference. Miami ran through it. And I just don't think, you mentioned like a sack early in the game, a pass being broken up, something like that, maybe a hard hit. I think that Miami team just got punched in the mouth early in that game, and it kind of shook them up, and they realized, oh, we're going to be in a 60-minute game. We haven't played these before, and that just took them by surprise.
I completely agree. I remember on the very first offensive play for the Miami Hurricanes that Ken Dorsey was sacked, and that was such a rare occurrence for that Hurricanes team. Now, again, it kind of, you're showing my age here, as you said. None of the players, so many of them were toddlers back then. Like you said, when the 2003 Fiesta Bowl was being played. But the emphasis that I think that you would agree is, I think if you get hit hard and or a turnover is caused, or things don't necessarily go as easy as you had anticipated, I think that's where Ohio State, that they have that battle-tested experience that Clemson simply does not. I mean, that's not, I'm sure Clemson, they will point to the fact that they had a nail-biter one-point escape at North Carolina back at the end of September. But when you look at the ACC as a whole, Clemson ran completely roughshod over just about everybody, weren't really challenged at all. And so I think Ohio State's a completely different animal in my estimation.
Yeah, there's no question about that. These two teams are going to see the best teams that they've played by far, but especially on the Clemson side, the best team that they've played, probably from a talent perspective, is Texas A&M. From the standpoint of productivity on the field, is probably roughly Texas A&M, Virginia, Wake Forest. One of those three teams is the best team that they've played. Those teams are top 25 to 35 teams. Ohio State has played a Wisconsin team that is right in the top 10 mix. Michigan, top 10 to 12 team in the nation. Minnesota, so some other teams, Penn State, of course, is a top 10 to 15 team as well. So the caliber of play is without question on Ohio State's side. The other factor that comes into this is just a coach's approach to how he brings his team along physically, mentally, and emotionally to have them peak at the right time. And obviously, any team that plays in bowl games year after year after year, there's that aspect of preparing them physically for the long layoff, and then to get them ready to play, not work them too hard, but to work them in spurts and get them ready. But psychologically, there's a difference between, okay, we're playing in the Citrus Bowl this year, and yeah, we want to win the game, but we're playing in the Citrus Bowl. But I'm just using that as an example. For Ohio State, it's been the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl the last 2 years. But versus we're playing in a playoff game, and our season's on the line, and we're playing for a championship. Obviously, Clemson's experienced that the last 2 years. Ohio State could have experienced it, was chosen not to experience it by the selection committee, and didn't play a playoff schedule.
Right. Ohio State, this year's team in comparison, when you think of, as you accurately stated just a moment ago, the teams that Ohio State had over the last couple of years, they had, we'll just call it, lapses in concentration or effort or all of the above, back when they lost badly at Iowa and at Purdue. This team has, I think, a much better focus and concentration, and psychologically, I think Ryan Day has them as probably as well prepared as he possibly can. The few weeks off since the Big Ten championship could certainly be doing wonders for Ohio State with regards to getting people healthier. I know that Justin Fields' knee is not 100%, but you can't tell me that a few weeks of rest and rehabilitation that he's certainly going to probably be better than what we saw as Ohio State fans in the Big Ten championship.
Hey, and if we stay on the psychological narrative, there's another one right there. Any player has to deal with that when they're injured but still healthy enough to play. Is that holding them back? Are they thinking about that? Are they favoring it? All of those things. On the plus side for Ohio State is that Justin Fields has a little bit of time to prepare and heal, and he's also learned to play with it and play with it at a high level. So he's had to play a couple of the tougher opponents on the schedule and play with that tear in the knee and play with the brace on. And it was just reported a couple of days ago that we know that he'll play with the lighter of the two braces, that he did not play with the larger brace, the bulkier brace in the Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin.
Yeah, and who's to say? I know that Clemson has played against decent quarterbacks before, but I don't think that they've had to account for, somebody who truly is that dual threat, the caliber of Justin Fields, somebody who is a deadly passer and can make things happen with his legs. Now, granted, it remains to be seen how often Justin Fields will do that. We'll have to kind of wait and see. It really depends on, like you said, the fact that he's going to be wearing the brace, not the heavier one, but he is going to be wearing a brace. If that's going to hinder or hamper any kind of mobility. But my point being that, he's very difficult to defend and prepare for. So let's see how Clemson manages that aspect of the game.
You can catch my playoff and bowl predictions. They're available at the link in the description section below. We got Chip Minnich on the line from the O-Zone covering Ohio State football. Tony Gerdeman from the O-Zone joins us on a regular basis there on our Ohio State live stream, which actually is coming up Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, which should be a whole lot of fun. Chip, we appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the game. It's a rematch from 3 years ago. And actually, I've got a video posted where I went down both rosters and I lined up all the players that participated in that game and played fairly significant roles. So we're all talking about freshmen who are now seniors. So it was very interesting. Benjamin Victor, KJ Hill, Damon Arnett, Jordan Fuller in particular. Those guys, Malik Harrison played a little bit as well. On the Clemson side, I was both surprised and impressed. 3 of their starting offensive linemen were freshmen and played significant snaps, 50, 60 snaps in that game as freshmen against Ohio State. And those are their most prominent players coming back from 2016 in that experience to play this Saturday night against the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I think when you look at, the leadership of a KJ Hill, the Malik Harrison, Jordan Fuller, all the players that you rattled off there, they remember what it was like walking off that field, at being on the short end of a 31-0 rout. So I think that perspective is going to certainly help Ohio State in their preparation.
Chip, we thank you so much for stopping by, and again, enjoy the game.
You too. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.